Hello everyone, Brills here. In this video I'm going to show you how to bake or optimize materials. Why would you bake material? Basically it optimizes your GPU performance. I have a simple analogy. The analogy for the unbaked material, imagine you need to show the same photo every some time to her, but you store that photo in your bulky camera, so every time you have to turn on the camera and search through the file. Now if you bake that photo, the baked photo is gonna be print digital photo that you can easily tuck in your pocket and view instantly. So faster load time and lower memory use. What assets baking will I cover up is basic combining color materials, procedural shader into texture, including their usual components, and finally, transfer high poly details into low poly or normals bump. Now, before we perform baking, you have to UV unwrap your mesh first. We can use Smart UV project if your model is not that complex, but if you need a more detailed way, you can watch my UV mapping tutorial. Okay, let's start dive in. This object have 3 materials and is just for color. We can bake it into one material. To bake it, go to the shading workspace, Shift A and search for image texture node. Click new to add a new texture, name anything you want, then set the width and height to any value you want. My recommendation is using the power of 2 resolutions because this is best in terms of performance in GPU. I will use 1K. We don't need alpha, so uncheck that, then copy the node to all of your materials you want to combine. If you're done, go to render properties, change the render engine to Cyclus. If you have a good GPU, change the device to GPU compute. Scroll down, we want to get their base color, so change the bake type to diffuse. Then uncheck direct and indirect influence, because we don't want any light affecting our color result. Make sure the output is image texture, and you select your object, then press bake. Wait. The baked image texture will be shown in bottom left. Save the image. That's it. Your material's color should be saved in texture image data, ready to use. Just for your information, this kind of coloring usually used on low poly assets or color masking map. For most procedural shader texture, still the same as before, add image texture node and other. After you done render properties, render engine Cyclus and GPU compute, scroll down. Most procedural texture have roughness, metallic, emit or emission, and diffuse or albedo. All of this is have the same way to bake, except metallic, a little bit different which I will show you later. For now, let's continue with baking the diffuse. Still the same as before, after you select your object and bake button, your texture should be appear in bottom left. Save it and ready to use. About the roughness, it has the same way, just make sure you have the roughness port connected. This is the emission example. Usually it only controls their strength, so the map is black and white. It's also possible to have color to bake too. So this is my metallic shader example. To bake this metallic texture, same as before, but we select emit bake type. So select your principal BSDF node and open up the emission drop-down. Plug the metallic port into the emission strength. Make sure your metallic value is 0. Select your object, then press bake. The texture should be appear in bottom left again. Save it and ready to use. Yeah, what we just do is just borrowing the emit port for metallic. Yep, this is a hack from community. Ambient occlusion have the same way we did previously. The only difference is you can immediately bake it, because ambient occlusion is basically how light is occluded or blocked by surrounding geometry, almost like shadow but no light needed. If you want to use the texture, you can use color multiply node and connect it to the base color. So I have low poly mesh and high poly mesh with some details. To transfer or bake the high poly mesh details into low poly mesh, there is plenty ways to do it. We're going to use the multi-res method, cause this is the simplest way in my opinion. Add multi-res modifier in low poly mesh. We want to add shrink wrap modifier, but first make sure your poly mesh and high poly mesh position, rotation and scale is the same, perfectly overlap. After that, add a shrink wrap modifier to low poly mesh. Select wrap method to nearest surface point. Snap mode to on surface. The target is the high poly mesh. This basically means we make the low poly vertices wrap around the high poly mesh as precise as possible. But low poly mesh don't have the same vertices count to high poly mesh, so there is no way our poly mesh can capture the high poly mesh shape. This is where multi-res modifiers helps. We use subdivide from multi-res to help the low poly mesh capture the shape of the high poly mesh. Press the subdivide button 4 to 5 times. This is going to be the baked normal texture result. If you're happy with this multi-res subdivide, you can apply the shrink wrap modifier and change the multi-res level viewport to 0. Then you do the same at image texture node and other. But on the bake section, check the bake from multi-res. Choose the bake type to normals. Press the bake button, wait, and the texture should be ready to use. Oh, and also you can remove the multi-res modifier after you've done baking. Okay, that's all for the PBR baking, but there is also this placement map or height map. I don't include it because that map is have a different purpose than the other, so we'll talk about it in a different video later. Okay, that's all from me. Hope you learned something new. Cheers!